Well, the show has wrapped. Everything's back in the box. It's on its way back to PRG, who supply all the equipment and employ me for the show. And it's my last night in these digs, these student accommodation facilities. So I thought, let's take a look at some of the things that were given as gifts at the Edinburgh meetup. And the Edinburgh meetup was a similar number of people to the Glasgow meetup, and the same thing happened. Super technical people that formed groups and just chatted, and it went on for 6 or 7 hours. It was very enjoyable. So one of the most interesting gifts was this slightly terrifying metal bigclive.com sculpt, well, actually casting, technically speaking, made by a couple of technicians at the Montgomery Theatre. And, or is that Montgomery? Montgomery Theatre, that's the correct pronunciation, I think. And this is actually made of melted down old components out of strand dimmer racks. Now, where's the other bit? The guys basically got a very lightly 3D printed form of the bigclive.com logo. And then they encased it in sand and used this lost wax technique, but they used lost plastic instead. It relied on the plastic melting out the way and creating a path for the metal. And what's especially interesting about this, I'm just going to remove this before I reveal the names of the individuals involved. What's interesting about this is that they decided to try and clean it up by using a chop saw, a high-speed rotating abrasive disc saw, I think. And it got so far before the blade shattered and bits of the blade shot everywhere and the sculpt shot out. So exciting times. This is actually quite terrifying. This looks like something you'd find in an archaeological dig and that alludes to the presence of alien life forms. I liked a lot. It's kind of, part of me was tempted to actually secretly bury it out in the grounds of this building so that someone dug it up at some point in time. But this is going back to Isle of Man with me because this is quite an intriguing device, a thing. So that was one. There was the smaller version, 3D printed, the bigger version and a couple of lights, a power can and a generic profile, much like a Source 4. All very interesting stuff. So thanks to the guys at the Montgomery Theatre for that. It was all very interesting. Another gift was this Adafruit ruler. Now I think, have I got one of these or have I got a copy of this? I might have a Chinese copy. But this is it's kind of a ruler, but it also has the profiles of the surface mount components and some symbols as well. And that means that if you're not sure which form of component it is, you can just place it on it and to determine the pitch and what the number of the component is. It's also got graduated holes at this end. Very intriguing. One odd thing about this is that the inches have been done as 1/8 of an inch, whereas in typical electronic pin separation, say for instance this opto-isolator here, it's 1/10 of an inch. But yes, it's quite neat. I like that. This circuit board is out of this, and it's a generic lithium cell charger, and the capacitor failed, and the person who gave me this said he'd replaced the capacitor with another one. Now, where is it? He also gave me some little plastic project boxes, which are not going to open now because my fingernails are just not up to the task. There we go. And he got some capacitors to replace that, but I noticed the capacitors he's got have no polarity markings. They do have a longer lead, suggesting the positive lead, but no negative band that you'd normally expect in the case. I wonder if these are non-polarized capacitors for audio applications. But either way, he'd put replacements in and they puffed up very quickly after use. And there's a couple of possibilities that maybe these are the non-polarized electrolytics, or maybe they're just standard ones that aren't suited to the high frequency. When you use a capacitor output of a high frequency power supply, it has to be a low ESR, low equivalency resistance, and it's designed to operate at high temperature because these capacitors that are being run at the sort of frequencies that these things run at are put under much more stress than the traditional 50 Hertz capacitor. So what we've got here on this circuit board is we've got the mains come in. Oop, that's a broken soda connection there. We've got the mains come in. It's got a fusible resistor rated 10 ohms, which is very common. We've got the full bridge rectifier based on 4 diodes, and then it's charging this capacitor up, which is rated 4.7 megafarad, 400 volt, really super common value. And that then powers the circuitry, which in this case is based around some transistors in the back and then a main switching MJE 13003, which is a very common transistor. It looks like it's a 2-transistor version. I can see the other transistor there. Very common type of flyback converter with this sort of line drawn around here to indicate the separation. No X2, should I say X2, Y1 capacitor, filter capacitor, opto-isolation feedback, and some discrete circuitry on the other side. I'm not sure if this circuitry is going to provide an accurate 4.2 volt reference in this. I should think it would. It's been designed to take a chip. I'm guessing that would be the very common polarity non-specific chip that's used for charging, or maybe some other chip. Not sure. It certainly has a lot of pins common on the back. Not sure that would have been. But instead it's been built with discrete components and there's no fancy bodging or anything like that, so it looks like it's been designed to either accommodate the chip or other functions as well. It's like a multi-function board. So I'm guessing that the main problem with that was the diode seems to measure okay. It measures as a Schottky diode. And this, if they have been puffing up, it's most likely down to the fact that the capacitors aren't really suited to the high frequency. Unless the voltage is going high. I don't really know, I've not powered this up. But yes, interesting. Nice little project boxes too. Another thing with a 18650 cell that would go in like that was a flashlight given to me by Michael. Now, Michael is from Slovakia. And he was one of the sort of maintenance people at the student accommodation. General sort of like cleaning and maintenance in the facilities. And he said he'd found this flashlight and he didn't find a charger with it. It's clearly designed to take the generic 4.2 volt charger. And this Ultrafite battery, now we've come across Ultrafire. This one is called Ultrafite, so it's a rip-off of a rip-off of a rip-off with a grossly exaggerated capacity. And it does have what looks like a protection circuit board in the end. I think I may investigate that further. But when you unscrew the end of this, it's designed to go to low intensity, high intensity, and strobing. And it's also focusable by turning this ring, which moves the LED in and out, as I shall show you in a moment. And if you take this to bits, oh, the whole thing's come to bits. Oh, the whole thing has come to bits. Interesting. But as you take this to bits, and I may have tightened it up deliberately too much because it boinged earlier on. The spring shot out. But if you screw this end off, there's the lens that with the threaded guide that winds it up and down, which it isn't now because it's probably slipped right out of that. But let's see if I can wind that right out. Is it going to come out? No, that's winding it down. Oh, the lens has just popped out. Yeah, the LED, anyway, the LED winds up and down because it's threaded and it goes in this cross-shaped guide. And if you, there's the spring and the ball bearing. If you pull it out, it just lets rip there. It's got a little spring and ball bearing that gives that sort of clicking tactile feedback as it rotates. Now I'm going to have to try and sit this, there it goes, that's it, out. And can I push the circuit board out or is it wedged in? Let's try and push the circuit board out. The circuit board has just come out. That's good. So the circuit board has a little 6-pin chip. This is so common with these devices. It does the switching. It's marked CA13, by the look of it, which is probably going to be a fairly generic number. Not sure if that's going to be standard. It's got the classic cluster of parallel resistors in series the LED, and very little other support circuitry. Interesting. I'm also guessing that because this looks like it's just an on-off switch, and the way you switch between them is to turn it off and on, I'm guessing that ultimately it just stores a charge briefly to ride over the fact you're turning it off and on to remember the last memory setting. Interesting stuff. What about the heat sinking for the LED? It's basically the LED is sat into the sort of aluminium cup in here, which does kind of, does it make contact with the side? It does make contact with this threaded section, so that'll also provide some means of heat dissipation. Nice. I wonder if we can get this little dish out here. I get the feeling it's not going to come out that easy, but you know what? I think we should have a go anyway. No, that little reflector has been pushed in and is probably retaining the LED in. Shall we be destructive? Shall we get right in there and see what we can find? I don't think I'm going to get that out. That really has been wedged in tight. And I'm guessing there's a little circuit board behind that with the aluminium backing that's been wedged in by that. I'm going to have to go in now, haven't I? That's it. The knowledge has to be gleaned. So let's try and force that little cup out there. I'll just split it and tear it out to get into the secrets within. Where's my snips, and I'll misuse them. If I come across somewhat cheerier tonight, it's because Vince, the crew chief, called by tonight with a bottle of wine which he's autographed and drawn a cock and balls on. That's very Vince. Vince also donated a few things for Teardown, which I'll happen later on, including a really hideous power bank. It's very odd. In fact, one of the other videos, one of the more recent videos was featuring Vince's meddling in the making of the video, to great mirth. So this thing inside, yeah, it is. It's a little circuit board that is held in by that cup, and it is the aluminium back circuit board. So it's the LED mounted in the aluminium back circuit board with a little insulating shim that sits over the top, and then this domed reflector cum restraint has just been pushed in and jammed that in tight against the back. I don't see any heatsink compound though. No, it's just relying purely on the friction of that being jammed in. All very functional. The torch also has police printed on it, as many of them do, despite the fact it's most likely nothing to do with the police force whatsoever. I would try and get this out. Oh, this does unscrew. Let's take it out then. Is this going to... yeah, it is unscrewing completely. I'm going to leave Michael some goodies when I leave. I'm going to leave him some technical stuff. Little toys. So let's get this out. It's a little module. I don't think that's coming out quite as intended, but let's just ram it out without any subtlety whatsoever. If it's going to come out, it might not be keen to come out because this button may be jamming it in. Let's try the technique of nudging that button down the way to see if we can release this. This little rubber grip here is also not really happy about this. Let's push that in. I'll try not to go off the camera to do this. Oh, that bit's just broken. It's in the name of science. That's kind of looking promising. Is that going to come out now? It's kind of trying to come out. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. So what do we have? We've got the click on, click off button. We've got the charging port, which I'm guessing is just going to connect between the case via this springy bit of wire here, and the tip. It's just going to connect directly across that. And then the switch is just going to connect to that. Can we take this apart any further? I think it splits long ways. This is where I can stab myself. Not for the first time. Yes, it does split that way. Oh, that's very simple. Yeah, that's just a contact's been folded across in that jack onto this, so it really is connected between the case and the end. And the switch is just connecting between the spring onto the battery contact and the other bit that connects up to the LED, this control circuit board. Well, that's quite simple. Okay, what's next? Someone gave me a microphone. I shall give this one a go and see if it varies. There's a lot of difference between the microphones. They all seem to have different sort of decibel ratings. One of the biggest problems I have with the Moto G phones, currently the Moto G4, is that Lenovo, who took it over, have not really got the settings optimized, shall we say. So the volume of the microphone is quite low. I always try avoiding video processing. I think I'm going to have to process it in the future. Now this is a Vodafone Personal Roadwatch 1800, and it predates SatNav by a long way. And these units received a radio signal or an infrared signal, I think it was a radio signal, from overhead beacons mounted under bridges. And as you're going along the road, if there's a traffic jam ahead, it would give you an indication of how long it was to that, to give you an option to turn off the road and choose alternative routes. And this unit is self-contained. It's got the worst possible clip in the back for holding the battery on, a cover on, that is so hard to open that you have to use tools to get into it. And it takes 3 AAA cells. And is this thing going to open? If it doesn't open immediately, I'll pause to open it. No, it's opened immediately. Oh, look at that. Oh, wow. So there's the processor. There's the LED display. It's a 5x7 dot matrix with various support chips, quite a lot of circuitry. And look at the antenna. The antenna has been formed as a spiral by using a double-sided circuit board with basically diagonal tracks coupling through to each other to create a continuous spiral aerial. That's quite neat, isn't it? It's got a little pizza sounder, it's got the battery contacts, it's got the display, the processor. That's fundamentally it. It receives a signal. Can I get any numbers off these? Not easily. Hold on, I'll try and get some numbers. LM31AC, no, sorry, LM431AC, which sounds like an op-amp. Could that be a sort of wireless frequency op-amp? Is that, or is that, I'm not really sure what that is. This chip here is a TDA 7010T. This chip is a Smart 358. Is that LM358? Op-amps of chip? Could be for driving the sounder, not sure. And the main processor is a 9906L02A by Motorola. Not sure what that is. This is quite old technology. It's obsolete now, though apparently a lot of the beacons are still mounted under the bridges for actually beaming information down to this to give the suitable arrows and directions and warnings. Interesting stuff. What is next? This is next. It's an LED light. Oh, hold on. There's something that really does deserve mention. A while back I mentioned that I love Australian workwear, and as such, someone generously gave me an Australian work jacket. I'm just trying to keep the microphone lead out of the camera shot here. Dry as a bone jacket, which is really such an extremely surprising gift. That's really appreciated greatly, thank you. It does fit. That is going to get a lot of use, particularly because my existing work one was wearing out. So I do appreciate that greatly. The thing about Australian workwear is it's a hybrid. It's a mixture of American and sort of British styles. It's very interesting. This is an LED light. It's a low voltage LED light. I could put the right tip in the screwdriver before we open this. I think that's probably a good thing. Let's open the correct screwdrivers. The person who gave me this said he got 5 of them for £8, which is staggering. So I think ultimately these are going to be the typical construction that we're fairly used to with these things. Honestly, these things, I've said it before, I'll say it again, they're worth buying just the cases because the cases are so functional. They're a nice, robust, cast waterproof case with a reflector. They could be used to house other circuitry other than LEDs. But let's just shred this apart anyway. The reason I'm not going to start cutting into this battery right here, right now, I'll do it later, is because there's a smoke detector above the bench. That is one of the slight downsides. It's not just a smoke detector that evacuates this flat, it evacuates the whole block of flats, and that would cause great annoyance. So we've got the diagonal mounting screws in the reflector, which is common enough. I'll just do an apocalypse. We've got the LED here, which looks like a standard, probably a 3x3 1-watt array of LEDs to give this sort of roughly 10 wattish rating. Well, 9 watt, technically speaking. And in the back, I would expect to find if I can open this. You know, I don't need to use this screwdriver. I do have my full toolkit next to me. That might be an idea if the rest of the screws are tough going, but we'll see what we can do with this first. No, I'm really going to have to get the other toolkit up. Where is my toolkit? It's miles away. It's over next to the door. And by miles away, I don't mean that far away. Right, I think I'm going to have to pause because the screwdriver is out of reach without me having to take the baseball cap off, which has the microphone attached to it. So I'll pause and I'll take the back off this, and I'll also peel this apart so we can see if the circuit board in the end does actually have protection circuitry like the DW01 chip. So one moment please while I investigate this. So chop, 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 and in we go with big boy toys. Interestingly, this, to save space, normally these cells are an inner sleeved cell with this metal strip running up the outside, but in this case they've just actually put a lick of Captain tape up the outside for separation, so that's quite thin, but it does the job, I suppose. There's an end cap sandwiched in place. I wonder if that's just held in place by friction then. I don't think it was welded on. And it's got the tag, the positive tag leading down to the circuit board to power the circuitry in the circuit board. It's got the negative is tabbed onto the case, and then it's got what appears to be, where's my magnifier, DW01? It is DW01A, and then the classic dual MOSFET package that is usually paired with that, which has the markings marked in such a way, they're laser etched and such. It's an 8205A, now I can read it from that angle. So this is a protected cell. That's quite interesting. It was down at a low voltage. I don't have a meter here to test it, to see if it's got the much capacity voltage left on it. The little LED floodlight had this tiny little circuit board inside that I was thinking that looks too small to be 10 watts. And the fact it says MR16 on it suggests that this is most likely a 3 watt power supply, which is fine. That will run the LED at quite modest brightness. It's not uncommon for these items. So yes, all good stuff. And is there anything else to take to bits? Oh, I should mention special thanks to Flint's, the theatrical chandlers, who were giving screwdrivers to select customers. Much appreciated. I got one of these Baco, I think it's a Posi 2, is it? Posi 2 screwdriver. Very handy, thank you. What else is... I think I've covered everything now, haven't I? I think I have indeed. So, yes, all good stuff. And tomorrow I'll be getting the train back to Glasgow and then back to the Isle of Man shortly thereafter. Ah, yes, I knew I was going to forget something, and it was this comet. Falling star, amber with tail. You see, the tattoo, Royal Edinburgh military tattoo, so let's give its correct pronunciation. The Royal Edinburgh military tattoo has a lot of pyro. It's got a lot of fireworks and special effects and projection. It's just huge. If you've not seen it yet, look out for it on television. This year's show, 2017, was just one of the best yet. It was spectacular. And to keep up with all the effects, we've actually got 2 pyro departments. We have the main firework department up top, who do the major shows, the major sort of displays at the end of the show and at certain sections throughout the show. And we have the arena special effects department, who also do a lot of pyro and also in the front of the castle. So at times the 2 departments are actually working together and syncing their effects. It's very good. And one of the effects was this comet falling star. And basically speaking, Edinburgh Castle has these portals on the side with the cannons sticking out them. And we use various things. The main pyro department up top has what are called cannon maroons that are mounted on top of the cannons we can't damage the cannons, we can't put anything in the cannons. So we have these mortar tubes mounted above the cannons with foam support. You'll see them featured in another video. And they basically just create a massive bang and a sheet of flame out the front of the cannon, and it looks great. And that was matched down the arena by the effect of cannonballs landing this year with fairly significant explosive charges on the arena. All very good. But one of the other effects they used at the end, they had these little things called comets with falling star amber tail, and all they did was they just dripped a ball of light, just physically just dropped. And if you can imagine, if this is a cannon, they had the foam with the cannon mortars above it protruding slightly from the front so it can't damage the cannon itself. And then, if that's the front portal that the cannons are sort of firing out of, they had a stick above that, a support with these mounted pointing down underneath. And all they do when they're fired is they drop that ball of flame. It looked fantastic because the front of house effects stuff is all sequentially controlled by very secure wireless communication and sequencers, so it can actually chase backwards and forwards. So they were basically chasing sort of sine waves of these balls of flame dropping out the cannons. It looked superb, and I mentioned to them, I said, that looks really good, so they sent me one up so we could take a look at it. So this is made by Wells Fireworks in the UK. Wells Fireworks Limited, whose phone number here, and I'll say it because, you know, it's a worthwhile British company. Telephone +44, which is the international code 01903 882366. And this effect is so simple. See, here's the star. Here's the bit that burns. And it's basically made of the combustible compound with a slight dusting of the black powder over the surface, I'm guessing, to help it ignite better. And the front of it is normally just a very thin plastic film that the whole function of the film is it holds it in against the igniter in the back here, the electric match. And all that happens, this thing points down, and you can see the tube has the spacer way pushed right in here. So it really is just room for that star to be pressed against that, just barely enough room. And when you see the things before they've been opened, like I've opened this one, they actually have that slight dome over the top of the star being held in place. And when it's fired, all it does is it ignites the star. The star burns its way through this thin plastic film over the front, and then it just falls out lit. And that's what gives this dropping comet effect a really, really nice effect. Not one I can say that I've ever seen before, because it really is just optimized for single shot firing in sequence from control systems. But that is a really, really nice effect. So thanks to the Pyro Department, Ewan especially, Ewan and Susie of the Pyro Department, who sent that up to me. Very nice indeed.